last time on Dragon Ball Z.
They told me, son, you were born to do great things. They were right.
I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive. You think that's a child down there? She's a little sister now. Somebody went and turned a sweet baby girl into a monster. It's Ryan! Goddamn Andrew Ryan! Head to medical!
Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that home? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked?
There ain't no Atlas, kid. The name's Frank Fontaine.
I had you built! I sent you topside! I called you back, showed you what you was, what you was capable of! Even that life you thought you had, that was something I dreamed up.
You saved them. You gave them the one thing that was stolen from them. A chance.
Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt!
Hallelujah. You've come from my land. This will end in blood, DeWitt. Then again, it always does with you, doesn't it?
It's terror. It's like a window. A window to another world.
These holes have shown me yet another wonder.
But if you believe in common folk, then join the Fox.
Only way to
Elizabeth. She's your daughter, you son of a bitch! And you abandoned her! Was it worth it? Huh? Did you get what you wanted?
Booker.
Tell me!
Booker!
Tell me!
It is finished.
There's always a lighthouse. There's always a man. There's always a city.
No! No,
Shut
no, no!
down the machine!
No!
Shut it down! Shut down the machine! Now do it!
I'm sorry.
When a soul is born again, what happens to the one left behind in the baptismal water? Is he simply gone? Or does he exist in some other world, alive, with sin intact?
We're closed.
You don't look the sort who can afford to turn down legitimate work.
What do you want?
How about we start with a light?
Well, you got a name, miss?
Elizabeth.
Ignoring the date that definitely isn't important, Elizabeth tasks Booker DeWitt with finding a little girl named Sally, who Booker repeatedly states is dead, using a weird doll head for emphasis. Booker follows Elizabeth out of his office to see that Columbia is looking a lot more underwater these days. That's right, the Buried at Sea DLC takes place in Rapture. I mean, it's right there in the title, this shouldn't come as a big surprise.
I can't read.
But that means we get a glimpse of Rapture before everything went to chaos and communism, and we get to do it in the company of Elizabeth, looking better than she did at any point in the main story. Exploring Prime Rapture is great. You get to see all these bright colors, creepy little brainwashed children who stopped at step 1 on how to apply clown makeup, and giant abominations of man and machine doing things they've never been capable of doing before. Upon hopping in an elevator, Elizabeth presses Booker for more information on Sally.
Where are you taking me?
When's the last time you saw Sally?
What?
She was taken from you, wasn't she?
How do you know this?
She was taken, down at Surprise. You were playing the tables and...
She disappeared.
And?
Cop friend of mine, Sullivan, says they found her floating in the docks.
You see the body?
Look.
Did you see the body? This world values children, not childhood. There's a profit to be made and men who make it. I'm taking you to one of them.
The intrigue may be rising, but our protagonists are no longer, as they've arrived at their destination just in time to see the practical uses of both Houdini splicers and Incinerate, one of the highlights of this DLC. However, certain issues begin to rear their heads, like finding a kinetoscope in Rapture, an immediate telltale sign that this isn't the same Rapture we went through, just one of the infinite Raptures in the Sea of Doors, which is not as cool or interesting. Though there is an audio log from our good not-friend Dr. Chong that explains this, as he observes our other good and equally as dead not-friend Jeremiah Fink experimenting on plasmids and making them ingestible. And fun fact, one of these kinetoscopes reuses a scene from BioShock 2, so this version of Rapture just takes inspiration from everything. Anyway, Booker follows Elizabeth's lead and discovers that her source is rather eccentric, but they need an invitation to talk to him, and all the invites have already been passed out, meaning it's time to engage in a little trolling as Elizabeth creates distractions so Booker can rob some stores blind, hoping to find an invitation in the process. They find the mask in the third of the 3 stores because plot got a plot and use it to enter that room Cream sang about that one time, though it's only the entryway to Sandra Cohen's performance, painting 2 people dancing in a room filled with an uncomfortable amount of bathtubs and electrocuting them to death if and when they don't live up to his expectations. I'd ask how so many people can watch this display, but people in real life watch shit like this, so it's not really that far off. And if all this wasn't bad enough, we still have to talk to him.
Who are you?
Name's DeWitt.
Is that right? My. This one's a real biscuit. Isn't he a biscuit, lady?
Let's ask a few questions.
Questions? Yes. Yes! It is the work of man to ask. It is the work of the artist to answer.
You've seen this girl, haven't you?
We artists see more than most. You are more than you claim to be, little songbird. Are you not? Watch this one, DeWitt. She'll take you where you don't want to go. But I know the child in that photo is important to you. So many children flit, flit, flit away. I know where the girl is. And I will send you to her. In exchange, all I ask is a dance.
What?
I see something in you two. Art strips away artifice. Show me who you are, and I will show you where you need to go.
I don't know what it is about Sandra Cohen that has made both studios that have made BioShock games want to incorporate him. He's a fun and interesting character, but I'd say Steinman is a lot more impactful. Anyway, he clearly knows more than he's letting on. He electrocutes Booker and Elizabeth until they pass out and they wake up in a bathysphere, and Cohen explains he sent them to where he sent Sally and not so subtly implies he knows their relationship to one another. Then our protagonist not so subtly reminds us what we're playing as they near Fontaine's sunken department store.
Barry, let's see.
I hope you enjoyed our trek through a revamped Rapture because we're not going to be seeing it again for a while. Now we have a poor man's recreation of the BioShock aesthetic with the gameplay of BioShock Infinite, so no one is pleased. But hey, at least it comes with home movies. I never said they were good. Speaking of things that aren't good, the way forward is blocked. However, there just so happens to be a skyhook nearby.
Sky? You mean the air grabber?
Or an air grabber. Why would anyone in Rapture invent the skyhook? There's no things in the sky to hook to! Booker says kids use them to ride around on pneumo lines, but why would anyone in Rapture allow that? The last thing you need is some dumbass kid breaking a pneumo line and preventing people from getting the packages they need. Rapture is a work-oriented city. They would not value entertainment over efficiency like that. I get they wanted to mix the gameplay of Infinite with the aesthetic of Rapture, but it just doesn't work. Rapture was a tight and oppressive atmosphere, and Infinite's gameplay was designed for the much more open Columbia. If they really wanted to recreate the feeling of Rapture for this DLC, they would have recreated the gameplay style as well. Also, why even bother calling the tonics plasmids if you aren't going to rename the tonics to their plasmid counterparts? Booker still has Devil's Kiss and Possession instead of Incinerate and Security Command / Hypnotize. Upon crossing the gate and witnessing a splicer use Winter Blast, it was super effective. The two realize they need to get to the tram that runs between the 3 buildings of the store, as it's the only way to get to Housewares and save Sally. The path to the tram is, of course, the only obstructed path, but freezing the water would create the perfect bridge. Good thing they just witnessed exactly how to do that, and there happens to be a sign right next to them advertising where they might find a way to become Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa and do it themselves. The room ahead is filled with splicers, but Booker has limited ammo, so they stress the use of plasmid traps and stealth kills. Stealth in BioShock is never very fun, so it's a good thing this is the only time they do it. They would never do it again like right after this and make it so stealth is the only way forward. That would just be dumb. Almost as dumb as stressing melee kills yet not giving us the wrench back! We do get some things back though, as Booker can find both an OG Tommy gun and an infusion, a meeting of old and new. Another new feature that carries over to Rapture is gear, and it's equally as forgettable. Seriously, every time I play this game I forget gear is a thing. Heck, I forgot it's a thing during the game. They continue their way through the Fontaine department store and find that the way forward requires Electro Bolt, Shock Jockey, ugh. But first they get their Winter Blast, Old Man Winter, I hate it here, at Rapture on Ice, a place one trip to the surface away from being taken over by Mr. Freeze, but only the weirdly Austrian version. Booker takes down Mr. Einfrieren only to find that he got max high on his own supply, so Elizabeth busts out her special new plasmid called Tear to bring one in. Tears are basically described as wish fulfillment, right? With Elizabeth essentially creating whole new worlds or pulling objects through from other worlds. She's not limited by the siphon anymore. Why didn't she just open a tear to a world where the path to the tram wasn't broken? Or better yet, one where they're just in housewares. And yeah, Old Man Winter acts like exactly as Winter Blast did. It freezes people. Shocker. Well, it doesn't shock people, but you get it. Though if you're interested in shocking people, Shock Jockey isn't that far away. With Booker ready to kill the dinosaurs and ride the lightning, they're free to head back down and enter the tram, where they have a conversation I swear they already had.
I gamble.
What?
You asked me how I lost Sally. I gamble. Took her somewhere a kid's got no business being. I was winning. In a place like that, you don't let a kid out of your sight.
But you did.
Yeah, and here we are. Where are you taking me?
When's the last time you saw Sally?
What?
She was taken from you, wasn't she?
How do you know this?
She was taken. Down at Surprise. You were playing the tables and...
She disappeared.
Good guy, Booker, confirming the information Elizabeth already knew a whole 2 hours later. Luckily, in this gigantic furniture store, Sally happens to be right outside the tram when they arrive, though a splicer scares her into a strangely redesigned air vent. Elizabeth then embraces her inner John Kramer and concocts a plan to close all the air vents and crank the heat up, trapping Sally in a Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria simulator situation, except there's only one way out, essentially cornering her and sending her right into their arms. I gotta say though, little Rapture girls and air vents, usually not a good time. The final objective is made easier with the assistance of the radar range, which is basically the world's most dangerous popcorn machine. Combine it with the nearby bucking Bronco, and you've got yourself an air fryer.
Use quantum physics to look into alternate universes to see every joke ever made, and yours was still by far the worst.
With all the vents closed, it's time to turn up the heat and get our Sally back.
Sally? Sally, it's Booker. It's me. Sally, come on. I'm gonna get you out of here. Sally! Come out here right now! Sally. No.
Mr. Bubbles!
I told you it's usually not a good time. For all the flack I've been giving this DLC so far, seeing Booker DeWitt fight a Big Daddy is pretty cool, even if it's not exactly the Big Daddies we're used to. Its extendable and retractable drill arm basically gives him Scorpion's move from Mortal Kombat, as well as the inverse, so he can hit you no matter what range you're at. Cause you know, he wasn't strong enough already. But once Daddy's down, it's time to once again attempt to rescue our girl. I'd say she's well done by now.
Don't fall, please. Don't. I'm here. I just want to take you home. I just want you to stop.
You're hurting her.
She's got to come with me.
She's not your child.
She is mine.
Let her go. Let her go.
She's mine.
The jail is closing.
Shut it down. Shut down the machine.
You've got to pull her through.
Shut down the machine.
No, she's not through.
Hurry.
Shut it down.
No, look,
I remember all of it. That poor child.
She wasn't yours, Comstock.
No.
I wasn't.
No.
Yet you had to have me, didn't you?
No, this isn't right.
And when the guilt was too much.
You turned to us to solve your problem.
To provide a place to go where you might forget.
Where there never was an Anna in the first place.
Comstock was never one to own up to his errors, was he, brother?
Never comfortable with the choices he made.
Always seeking someone else's life to claim as his own.
Elizabeth. Child. I am so sorry.
No, you're not. But you're about to be.
Well, alright then. In summary, this world's Zachary Hale Comstock escaped being erased from existence because he escaped into an alternate reality where he was Booker DeWitt. And Elizabeth, or Anna, is, well, how did Peacemaker put it?
I'm thorough.
So she created this elaborate plan to remind Comstock of his horrible actions since his Anna lost more than a pinky, and then kill him. Though if Comstock has no memory of Anna, why did he get the AD branding too? The Lutessa said he wanted to forget, and branding the back of your hand with the initials of what you want to forget is a pretty shit way to forget something. But whatever, we still got a second part to get through, and it's over twice as long. Oh, joyous day! BioShock Infinite Burial at Sea Episode 2 Subterranean Boogaloo begins with a recap of the original BioShock. Kinda weird to do that here and not before part 1, but what do I know? And then we pick up with Elizabeth in Paris, and no, at no point do they make any indication toward whether or not the Elizabeth we are now controlling is the same one from the BioShock Infinite we experienced. Given what's about to happen, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a different one. Elizabeth explores this idealized version of Paris that I guarantee at least half teenage girls think is what Paris actually looks like, though things take a turn for the more accurate when Elizabeth comes across Sally, chasing her through the suddenly stormy streets right back into Rapture, where Elizabeth is haunted by the guilt of using Sally as bait to kill Comstock, so she decides to go back and save her. What's the worst that could happen?
What's the holdup?
Just having a bit of a laugh, Atlas.
This ain't a sporting event. Put a bullet in her. No need to torture the poor girl. We're not animals, you know.
All right.
Let her go!
Quiet down, dear. In a minute, all your problems will be over.
Elizabeth. Tell him you can get him back.
Booker? Booker?
Say,
What? I don't understand.
Say, I can get you back to Rapture.
What?
Just say it.
I can get you back to Rapture.
Put the gun down. Now, what was that you said about Rapture?
I can get you back to Rapture.
And how you plan on doing that, sister? You some kind of magician?
Suchong.
What?
Tell him Suchong.
Chong.
And how do you know that, slant-eyed wonder?
You're his lab assistant.
I'm his lab assistant.
If it escaped your notice, Andrew Ryan sunk us 5,000 fathoms below his shining city. How does Chong propose to get us back?
That's between me.
That's between me.
And the slant.
And the slant. But if I do this, the girl goes with me.
Little sisters are worth their weight in gold. She's not up for negotiation.
Last time I checked, back in the city they were making little sisters by the dozen.
That's a right fairy tale you've dreamed up, sister. But if you're lying, we can just as well kill you tomorrow. Down here, we got nothing but time. In case I need to get hold of you. If you see Chong, tell him
Atlas says he hasn't forgotten him.
Wow, that's probably the worst thing that could have happened, and in record time. The only thing that could be worse is if she died immediately. So Elizabeth is all alone in Rapture with no memory of coming back and forced to work for a madman to save her life, all while hallucinating her father. Somehow, things only get worse from here.
What are you? Huh? And how did you know exactly what to tell Atlas?
Let me ask you a question. You feeling like yourself, Elizabeth?
I feel strange and smaller. I can't see the doors. What's behind the doors? I can't see the future. I can't even see any tears. Oh my God. Stay away from me. Booker. No, please don't. I died here. I was killed by that. Stay away from me!
I told you. In summary, one of the infinite Elizabeths that went on this adventure died in Rapture, and the Elizabeth we're playing as created a quantum superposition by returning to a universe where she's dead. Quantum superposition, alive and dead at the same time, you remember. In doing so, this version of Elizabeth has cut herself off from the omnipotent god powers she had. We're not even 20 minutes in and she's royally screwed herself. Elizabeth progresses through an air vent littered with glass shards for some reason, which introduces a strange new noise mechanic. If Elizabeth walks on glass or water, it will alert enemies to her position. See, Elizabeth isn't an all-American bad fighting machine like her dear old dad, so you're gonna have to take the stealth approach. And yes, that's why this episode takes twice as long, because Elizabeth's stealth repertoire starts and ends with slow crouch walking behind enemies and bonking them to horny jail with her scare grook. Also, there's a lock-picking minigame now, which can occasionally gift Elizabeth with a noisemaker. As the name says, it makes noise and is used to lure enemies to certain positions. Weirdly enough, health works as it did in BioShock, not BioShock Infinite. Elizabeth can pick up medkits and has to manually use them to replenish her health. Anyway, there's a school attached to this furniture store for some reason, though it does teach some good lessons the people of today need to learn.
If I can afford to see the doctor, is it my concern that others cannot? No, says the damnable parasite. We must all crowd our way into the physician's office.
On her way out, Elizabeth picks up a crossbow loaded with sleep darts and a pistol. Plain and simple, don't use the pistol. Elizabeth can't handle swarms of enemies, and one gunshot will call all nearby splicers right to her. Also, the crossbow bolts are very helpful, but use them sparingly. Elizabeth's literal crawl toward finding Chong for Atlas brings her to a sign that the doctor took over the Silver Fin restaurant, so that's her next destination. Nearby, she comes across my favorite kinetoscope across all of BioShock Infinite.
Human reproduction is vitally important to society. But there is no reason that the act of copulation cannot be pleasurable as well. Remember these tips. Sex is egotistical. Without self-esteem, those participating in coitus are revealed to be fraudulent, hypocritical animals. Ego is indispensable in the bedroom. Negotiate with your mate. Intercourse can be mutually beneficial to both parties. Set out expectations with your partner beforehand, outlining the services you will provide one another, and hold them to their side of the deal. Never forget, oral contracts and handshake deals are for starry-eyed gigolos. Always get it in writing. Your pleasure is your business. Remember, you come first. Nobody's going to keep an eye on your pleasure except you. Don't be left high and dry. Armed with this knowledge, go forth now and enjoy Sexual Congress the Rapture way.
Remember kids, get it in writing. And the reason that kinetoscope is located there is because it's right next to an erotic bookstore, selling such iconic issues as The Farmer's Daughter, Ready to Get Down and Dirty, Below Decks, Mother May I, Co-eds, It's Never Too Late for an Education, Sinners at the Pearly Gates, and Big Daddy, Rapture's Man of Steel.
Nigga, you gotta be ashamed of yourself, nigga. Real talk, you gotta be ashamed of yourself.
The strangest feature of this store is the peep show, where customers pay to enter booths and peep on a girl through a two-way mirror. consensually. The reason I'm mentioning all this is because it's where Elizabeth finds her first plasmid, Peeping Tom. It's basically Batman's detective mode, but it stops working when she starts moving, though you can upgrade it to change that. Finally, this is where Elizabeth traded out her more recognizable dress for her much better Rapture apparel.
Why? Why, because I died here? If I'm just like everyone else, I can't help Sally. I can't even get back to where I was.
If you don't mind me asking, love, why are you talking to nobody? If I'd pegged you for a loon, I might have had second thoughts on our arrangement.
I'll hold up my end, but I better find the girl the way I left her.
You're in no position to make demands. But I must confess, I do like a bit of sass in a lass.
I gotta say, having Atlas talk to you through a radio is a great way to bring back those original BioShock feels. Speaking of which, nothing says original BioShock more than a Big Daddy. Unsurprisingly, Big Daddies don't go down with a bonk to the back of the head. They have to be avoided entirely or else they'll terminate Elizabeth with extreme prejudice. This hub of shops is where a majority of our time will be spent going forward. It's filled with optional tasks like finding coded messages and plasmid upgrades, and splicers that want to kill you. So have fun spending 20 minutes waddling your way from one side to the other. Though you can get in touch with a little sister inside you, couldn't phrase that better, and crawl through vents for shortcuts and discovering other secrets. Regardless, the entrance to the Silver Fin is locked tight, and following a trail of blood, thanks Father, leads Elizabeth to blueprints of the heating system and helps her find a hidden vent. I will say, I like how we get to see Elizabeth's genius from her perspective, how she can immediately translate Morse code and how she can analyze blueprints to form a plan. It's cool stuff, I just wish everything else wasn't so boring! Elizabeth gets inside the Silver Fin and discovers that Chong knows about Columbia and Booker and is actually in possession of a Lutece device of his own. With help from Omni Booker, she realizes she can use a Lutece particle to raise the department store out of the ocean depths for Atlas. However, she needs to fix it first.
Looks like a punch list for things Chong needs to fix the machine. A cold cathode tube, a carbon dioxide scrubber, and a heatsink. Any of the vending machines should have the cathode tube. And we can look for a CO2 scrubber in the bathysphere showroom. A lot of models should have them. A heat sink. Oh, that's... Where in a department store are we gonna find...
Keep your cool with Old Man Winter.
That'll work.
Because that's what this slow, stealth-based DLC needed, arbitrary extensions through multiple fetch quests. While trying to leave, the security system activates and Elizabeth speaks to Chong. He lets her go when she says she plans on fixing his device, and then reveals that we share a birthday. Oh man, I'm really 0-2 on that one. Anywho, Elizabeth saunters around and collects the knickknacks and doodads to repair the Lutece device,
Knickknacks and doodads?
And steps through the tear into Columbia, marking the roughly halfway-ish point. Ugh. Elizabeth goes through the tear onto the First Lady and takes the spare Lutece particle, though Chong refuses to open the tear unless she collects a hair sample from Fink's lab. Given the audio logs about how Chong wants a sample from the lady he keeps observing through the tears, it should be pretty obvious where this is going. If you don't get it, you've probably understood nothing up to this point. Also, I don't know how Chong is controlling the Lutece device remotely, but whatever. Elizabeth ventures out into the main hull of the First Lady and nabs an Ironsides tonic before Booker could ever get his hands on it, which sucks because it's a pretty good one. It's basically Return to Sender with extra steps. It turns bullets fired at you into ammo for your weapons. I can't imagine many people getting much use out of it though, given the prioritization of stealth.
And now for something completely different.
I've taken your counsel, and you done me good service, but I will not hurt the boy. I will see Fink and Comstock burn, but I will not hold the son to account for the deeds of his father.
You've misunderstood us.
We neither asked you to harm the child.
Nor did we promise that yours would be the hand that would set Comstock's world afire.
A famous man once said,
And a famous man shall say,
I may reach the mountaintop,
but I fear I shall never visit the valley below.
But you mean I won't live to see the... No.
It's up to you what matters more.
Your part in the play?
Or the play itself.
Someone is coming.
She'll arrive a girl.
She must leave a woman.
And what makes the difference between a girl and a woman?
Blood.
Your part in the play.
Or the play itself.
Turn her into a killer? How?
Give the girl no choice.
And she will be forced to make one.
So Daisy never intended to kill Fink's son, she just needed to create a situation where Elizabeth would have no choice but to kill her. For some reason. I guess so Elizabeth would have the strength to kill Booker at the end. Or maybe the Lutesses are just a big fan of her amateur barber skills, I don't know. I could describe my thoughts on this, but Daisy already did it for me. Or will do it for me. Timelines.
You just complicate the narrative.
Elizabeth goes deeper into Fink's office and finds a giant clock that unlocks whichever door is pointed at, corresponding with what time it is for the workers, whether it be work, sleep, prayer, or leisure. Behind the sleep door is the clock key, thankfully, otherwise we'd be stuck here at the whims of the almighty clock, and a voxophone from Rosalind Lutece confirming that returning to a universe in which you died makes you human. Which is strange for her to talk about, especially because she and her brother aren't dead. She said herself that they were spread across the possibility space in Comstock's attempts to kill them. Unless she's talking about one of the alternate universes where they actually died, like how Anna got her head chopped off in one of them. See what happens when you keep making your story more and more complicated? Behind the prayer door, which I could really use one of right now, is an altar to the Founding Fathers, nothing of actual importance, and behind the leisure door is a voxophone and corresponding chalkboard detailing that the injectable plasmids we know and kinda whinge at are a much more economic choice than the ingestible vigors. While it's cool to show how the two cities learned from each other, the timing makes no sense. The idea is that Rapture copied Columbia's ingestible model, but then Fink learned that the injectable option was actually better, but had no time to revert back to that. If that's the case, then when did Rapture revert back to it? You could make the argument that it happens over time, except this DLC takes place on December 31st, 1958, meaning Alice's attack on the Kashmir restaurant to kickstart the Civil War and the downfall of Rapture happens later that day. Are we supposed to just assume that they ran out of the supply of ingestible plasmids during the war and all that was left was the injectable ones? I get that the main connection here is that both plasmids and vigors were born from the same atom-bearing sea slugs and little sisters, but come on! A perfectly easy fix to this would have been to just keep the plasmids in Rapture as needles in the DLC. Then we'd see that Fink observed this and realized it was a much more cost-effective approach than the drinks he was making. Boom, problem solved. Instead, they needlessly complicated things to the point that it makes no sense anymore. And this is all from one chalkboard! Finally, behind the work door is an elevator down to the labs where we find the hair, and a scene I actually really enjoy.
Listen, I got you your gun. I'm here for my ass.
But my Booker DeWitt died for the Vox Populi. You either an imposter or a ghost. My Booker DeWitt was a hero to the cause, a story to tell your children. You just complicate the narrative.
Look, are you there? I miss you. You were the only one who ever... You were my only friend. Booker.
I'm not even here. I'm a projection of your own.
Could you humor me then? Please.
I think Booker would miss you.
With Elizabeth finally realizing that maybe she made a mistake by murdering her dad, she finds out the labs have been sieged by the Vox Populi, which means yet more sneaky sneaking. There aren't any impenetrable big daddy stomping around, so we've been granted that one mercy at least. Progressing deeper through the labs, Elizabeth discovers that Fink and Suchong's shared research goes even deeper, with Songbird being based on observations of the big daddies. She keeps going through halls of dead animals, failed experiments, and Fink's attempts to get Songbird to imprint on Elizabeth, but nothing ended up working. So how did it end up protecting her so diligently?
Booker. The little girl in the film. It's me. My God. I remember he'd crashed into the tower. I guess he was in some sort of fight. I waited there thinking I don't know, that something would happen, but he just lay there, moaning. I couldn't just...
The lion with the thorn in its paw. So much for science.
I should have just left him there to die. I should have just... I will never escape it. Exploited, exploiting, me, Comstock, you, Sally. It's like a wheel of blood spinning round and round.
Yeah, guess what? The hair Suchong wanted is Elizabeth's. He wanted to study it to find out how to copy the imprinting process to the big daddies and little sisters. With her own hair in her possession, she fights past another batch of Vox and through Booker and Elizabeth's handiwork to return to the Tear and cross back into Rapture. Should be smooth sailing from here.
Do you know what they call someone who enters a man's home uninvited. A thief. And I do not remember inviting you into my city.
I had a deal with Chong.
Chong is my employee. It was not a deal he was authorized to make.
What do you want?
I granted Atlas and his thugs asylum. You serve those same men in a desire to escape from my generosity. If they shall not have asylum, then they shall have liquidation. Give a parasite an ounce of charity, he'll demand a pound.
I'm just looking for a girl that was taken from me. A little sister.
I don't claim to understand what you are, but I know that you are special. There is business we can do together. And so I give you a choice. Work for me, or die with Atlas.
I'm not going anywhere without that girl.
If it's a little sister you want, that shouldn't stand in the way of commerce. I've got dozens of them.
I won't leave without her.
My men stand ready to take down the door. In 60 seconds, they will enter the room. They will either treat you as a valued employee of Ryan Industries, or as a thief in the night.
Okay, everyone's coming back for their cameo appearance, I see. Elizabeth has 60 seconds to lay plasmid traps and enough Eve to lay maybe 3 of them. I don't know if I got supremely unlucky or something, but this fight chewed through all of my ammo and I pretty much only used the crossbow up to this point. Once Elizabeth proves she's not a rube, she has to make her way to Frank Fontaine's office to plant the Lutece particle, a task made harder by the newfound presence of Andrew Ryan's men. Luckily, Atlas just so happened to take Frank Fontaine's office for himself and can give her access to his private elevator. Elizabeth ascends to the top of the building and helps the building follow suit, upon which she is immediately betrayed by Atlas and interrogated about the ace in the hole, whatever that may be. The first attempt results in her passing out for 2 weeks.
Feckin' doctors.
So Atlas's plan B is to treat us to a first-person POV of a transorbital lobotomy to get the answers out. No! When that doesn't work, Atlas thinks a third-person perspective might be more effective and brings in Sally. How he got her without getting mauled by a big daddy is one of life's many unanswered questions. Like Atlas's question about the ace, since Elizabeth has no idea what he's talking about.
Shh, it's okay. It's okay. Listen, it's okay.
I can't tell him what I don't know. Where are we?
You saw all the doors. And what's behind all the doors?
The ace in the hole. It's here.
Yes.
But I don't remember this place.
You've never been here.
Then how would it?
The memories you lost, they weren't just of the past. You saw behind all the doors.
Even the ones into the future. This is where I'm going.
If you want.
I don't like it here.
It's a bad place.
He's never gonna let me go, is he? Even if I bring him the ace. Then why am I here? How if I was so smart? If I saw so much, why just send myself to the slaughter?
For Sally.
No, one day he will just rip her open and tear out her atom. All of this for nothing. Why did I do it? Why?
You have to decide.
Decide what?
To take a leap of faith. I can't tell you what you were thinking because you don't remember. But you chose to come. There. In that room.
The ace. I don't know what to do, Booker. Booker? Booker! No, please. Please just don't leave me here! Booker!
I wish I had a mind Booker to remind me of all the stuff I forget about. Anyway, her newfound knowledge allows her to skip about 3/4 of BioShock and head straight to Chong's lab, where she learns that the hydraulic extendo drills had a flaw causing the drills to snap off from the Big Daddy, and that the feature will be removed in all future models, explaining why we never see it. She also comes across an injured Big Daddy next to 2 little sisters afraid of him, including the daughter of the Russian couple who killed themselves when they learned of their daughter's fate in the original BioShock. See, I mentioned things for a reason. Elizabeth really needs that Big Daddy to move out of the way and learns that the little sisters are the only way to cure him.
I don't know what to do.
Going to die. Not fair. We can help. Help.
While a sweet moment showing that there was never a scientific bond between the Big Daddies and Little Sisters, it does immediately contradict what we just saw in part 1. If this was the first time a Big Daddy successfully imprinted on a Little Sister, then why was Booker killed for trying to rescue Sally? If they wanted to fix that, there was an easy solution. Make it an alpha series. BioShock 2 already explained that they had to come up with a new imprinting process after alpha series Big Daddies became useless if their little sister died, so they could have easily explained that they haven't been able to bond the Little Sisters and Big Daddies en masse yet, and thus still rely on alpha series models. Again, very easy fix that removes a contradiction. Moving on, Elizabeth finds an audio log marked "Send to Ryan," so it must be important.
Is that your puppy? She's very pretty.
Thank you, Papa Chong.
Break her neck for me.
What?
Break that sweet puppy's neck.
No, please.
Break that puppy's neck. Would you kindly?
No. No.
Very good.
Well, Chong isn't too far ahead, so maybe we'll get some more answers out of him.
Get away. Maybe if I modify the genetic sequence to... Sure. Sequence to allow for... Get away, you filthy little shit! What? What are you doing? Get back! Get back!
Or not. If you remember, the audio log he's recording as he dies is actually acquired by Jack in the first game. Also, it's very ironic that his death is the first proof that Big Daddies and Little Sisters have finally bonded. But Elizabeth finally has the ace in the hole for Atlas, and gee, I wonder what it could be.
We both know what happens next. Just get it over with.
Well, love, if you insist. What is this? It's just a bunch of gibberish.
What does this say, you little whore? Hey! What does this say?
It says... Would you kindly...
We've got the activation phrase. Now all we've got to do is get that genetic freak of nature on an airplane and Rapture's ours. Yeah!
I chose Rapture.
Chooses. A slave obeys.
They say to save one life is to save the world entire. It is you who are the safe one.
I can see all the doors. And what's behind all the doors. And behind one of them, incredibly, I see him.
je vois la vie en rose. Il m'a dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours. Et ça me fait quelque chose.
Well, that was a lot to take in. Again. In summary, omnipotent Elizabeth went back to Rapture and sacrificed herself because she knew that in freeing Atlas and giving him the activation phrase, she would defeat him in the long run and free Sally from Rapture because she knew Jack would do it once he arrived. Basically, the entirety of BioShock Infinite is nothing more than a prequel to BioShock, except it makes everything make less sense.
Now you've confused me almost immediately, and you promised me you weren't going to do that.
Now, again, the question goes back to whether Elizabeth is fully dead or not. If you go back to my theory after the main game ended, where I said Booker was rewarded for ending the infinite loop by being transported back in time with the knowledge of what he had done and with Anna, then the answer can go either way. You could say that Elizabeth is dead, the product of the loop, but Anna still lives, the daughter of Booker DeWitt. There's also an argument that it's just this Elizabeth that lost access to the Sea of Doors and that the other are still around. Because if one Elizabeth doing this killed the infinite Elizabeth, then she wouldn't have been around in BioShock Infinite because she would have collapsed in on herself already and died. Also, if being in the same universe as a dead version of yourself caused you to collapse, then the same should have happened to the Elizabeth we saw in the flashback in part 1, no? But regardless, I think I've analyzed this game enough for now, so let's finally put the series to rest and bury it at sea. Where do I even start with this? Well, I guess I'll get the hot button question out of the way first. Do I think this is the worst game in the series? No. I still believe that distinction goes to BioShock 2. At least you felt like you were doing something in this game. You got to explore an entirely new location and watch as it crumbled around you as a result of your adventure. However, I do believe this game doesn't hold up to scrutiny as well as the original. BioShock Infinite sacrificed tight, well-constructed storytelling in favor of scale and intricacy. They tried to spin as many plates as possible, and inevitably, some of them fell to the ground and shattered. I already talked about how I don't mind the Columbia Civil War not being the focus of the story, but I can see why it bothered other people. You essentially see it unfold from the beginning, and some people no doubt got invested in seeing how it would end. There was something there in showing how revolutionaries have a tendency to become as bad, if not worse, than the forces they fight against, but then they walk back on that and try to make Daisy a martyr who sacrificed herself for Booker and Elizabeth's cause. Her backstory already set her up to be great in the first role. They shouldn't have changed it. They also never even bothered to give Comstock any positive traits. Andrew Ryan spent a majority of BioShock as the antagonist, but they still showed he was a brilliant businessman who wanted to create a place where people could be properly rewarded for their hard work and not held down by any outside forces. It ultimately failed thanks in part to his hypocrisy, but the idea came from a good place. Comstock seceded from the United States because they emancipated slaves and didn't like it when he bombed the Chinese. The BioShock series has always had a focus on player actions, showing their control or lack thereof. From Atlas subtly forcing you to do whatever he wanted you to sparing or harvesting the Little Sisters, to now going through an infinite loop where nothing matters but what you do at the very end. While a cool idea, it does mean you've created a game where nothing the player does matters. BioShock Infinite also brings to mind another trilogy ending installment that attempted to recontextualize the whole series while hiding the plot twist in the title, and I'll say that this one at least did it better because you can tell they did it with the goal of paying respect to the world they created. At no point did it feel like they were insulting the players or trying to make you feel like an idiot. Had Irrational Games actually committed to a concrete ending and showed it at the end, I think it would have gone over much better. As for the change in gameplay, I actually enjoy it. I found myself switching weapons and tonics a lot more than I did in the other games and actually getting more out of the combat. Infinite never reaches a state of being too easy as the others do. However, there isn't a solid feeling of cohesion cohesion between any of the weapons and any of the tonics, so that level of satisfaction when you pull off a combo is absolutely missed. Then there's Booker DeWitt / Zachary Hell Comstock and Elizabeth Comstock / Anna DeWitt. I wish they'd done something similar to Tom Marvolo Riddle and Lord Voldemort, where both versions of Booker had names using the same combination of letters. For a game that tries to put meaning in everything, the changed names mean very little other than for the twist. Booker DeWitt is a great protagonist, coming off as a rough anti-hero with a good heart, much like another one of Troy Baker's iconic performances. Elizabeth, however, isn't as great. She tends to whine a lot, and it always feels like she's hiding something from you. Then there's the ending where she refuses to tell you anything, instead dragging out the process as long as possible while you beg her to get to the point already. I get that she's immortal, but I don't have all day. Finally, there's the Burial at Sea DLC. I just want to start by saying it's incredibly ironic that 2K Marin's work on a DLC about an underwater section of Columbia was scrapped for not being good enough, but we ended up with this. If Minerva's Den was DLC done better than the main game, Burial at Sea is the polar opposite of that. It makes the entire narrative of the series way more complicated than it needed to be, adding layers and explanations that only serve to open questions, contradictions, and discrepancies. They couldn't even be bothered to accurately capture the tight, oppressive atmosphere of Rapture because it clashed with their gameplay engine. At no point does it actually feel like you've returned to Rapture. The 2 minutes Booker and Elizabeth returned to it at the end of the main game was a better Rapture return than this entire DLC. Part 1 isn't even that bad, but Part 2 is an absolute mess. As I said, it's about double the length and has about half the content. It's artificially extended several times with ultimately meaningless objectives, all to end with a bigger downer than the main game did. Seriously, the whole Columbia section is absolutely pointless and only happens to fill in more lore about the Big Daddies and Songbird. Lore that, as I previously pointed out, doesn't make sense. When it's all said and done though, BioShock Infinite gets a 7 out of 10. A genuinely fun and exciting game with an interesting and unique story that occasionally crumbles under the weight of its own ambitions, but a few major flaws don't completely overshadow the goods on offer here. And with that, the BioShock series is officially in our rearview mirror. This has no doubt been the most challenging string of reviews I've done in terms of research and explanation, and you guys seem to have enjoyed it as well, so make sure to let me know of other games you'd like to see me cover in the future. For now though, I'm tired of crime-ridden cities underwater and crime-ridden cities in the sky. Take me back to the good old days of crime-ridden cities on God's green earth, and give me some knights to clean it up. I hope to see you there.
Continue?
It was you! You are the cringe-ass Nene baby of legend.